we're going to get started in just a minute or two. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar, The Service Contract Act, How to Manage Compliance and Improve Contract Profitability. We'll be getting started in just a minute or so. All right. Well, to be respectful of everyone's time, it's about a minute after the hour. And as folks start rolling in, we'll just go ahead and get started with our presentation. So I want to welcome you guys. This is BidExecs Houston presents the Business of Government Contracting series. And our goal is to help you excel in government contracting. I am a business development executive and your moderator today, Ameka Ali. So I welcome you all to BidExecs Houston series, the Business of Government Contracting. So thank you for joining us today, you all. So in today's conversation, we're going to be talking about Service Contract Act, managing compliance, improving contract profitability. If you want to ask questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll get your questions and comments answered live. So we're going to be talking about all things SCA today. So hopefully we'll help some small businesses save some money. And of course, you can always contact me directly, Ameka at BidExecs.com or at 832-736-2779. And again, let's get started with this presentation. So I'm Ameka Ali. I'm the managing partner here at BidExecs Houston. I'm a former federal contracting officer. I've had the privilege of awarding multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar contracts to small businesses throughout my career. I've been a contracting officer with the Berkeley Lab, NASA, GSA, to name a few. And BidExecs Houston is here to provide business development and proposal management solutions to you government contractors. And our guest today is Mr. Jim Campbell, President and CEO of Fringe Benefit Solutions. He's the founder of Axim Fringe Solutions Group, and on his journey from the U.S. Marine Corps, where today he is closely related to that firm, and following an honorable discharge from the medical reasons from the U.S. Marine Corps, Jim began a career in the health insurance business, working for the United Healthcare, where he established UHC small business platform in the state of Maryland. So I'm going to now allow Jim to take it away.
Thank you, Ameka. I appreciate it. So a little bit of information outside of what Ameka shared was that based on healthcare as it's structured, or benefits as they're structured for government contractors, we saw that there's a great need for further explanation about Service Contract Act or wage determination contracts. The dearth that was in the market, or that still is for government contractors, is basic knowledge, and then how to then take that basic knowledge and make it work for you and your employees. And that's what we'll cover a little bit about today. But about Axim, we focus only on government contractors. We focus on the benefits administration, the consulting, fringe dollar management, compliance for the DOL, whether it's ACA or IRS, or ACA for the IRS, or DOL, Health and Welfare, as well as Service Contract Act, Davis-Bacon Act, Aviation and Transportation Security Act, and then the benefits management around your fringe build, your rate build up for IT contractors as well. Axim owns 100% of our technology. Everything's homegrown. We don't outsource anything. All our security and everything is done here in the US. We are a fully transparent firm, all the way from fees and transmissions to data. So we put you as the employer, your employees, the Department of Labor, and your carriers all on the same sheet of music. There's no longer any ambiguity about where the data is and who is owed what and how it was paid for. And we've removed all those hurdles to make it easier for you to do business and maximize the benefits you offer to your employees and the profitability in your contracts. And lastly, innovation speaks at Axim. Axim is currently and has been the only registered government contractor in the benefits consulting space. My design behind that was to never have direct to government contracts like you all. It was to be able to sit on your side of the fence and be able to understand where you make money, where you lose money, and how you protect your employees with the best possible solutions, as well as the company. So we're constantly innovating. We're constantly taking in information and feedback from our clients and partners from across the country on how to make things better, and always willing to assist anybody with questions that you might have or need guidance. We're not in a law firm, so if you call and ask for help and don't need a sales job, we're here to help. So we will do our best to get you the right answers in the right direction, and you will not be getting a bill or anything, any nonsense like that. If we can help, we absolutely will. Next slide. So Axim works in all 50 states. We've worked and we have done industry-wide, whether it's SCA or DBA, ATSA contracts, you name it, for over 120 different contractors across the country. We represent more than 55,000 employees, and we've substantiated over 320 audits directly on behalf of our clients with the Department of Labor. Now, those metrics might not sound like much, but the average employer in the United States with a Service Contract Act contract will be audited once, at least once, within 3 years. That is a fact. That is a statistical fact. To add to that fact, the Department of Labor recuperated over $2.8 billion last year from federal government contractors for noncompliance. Now, noncompliance can be a wide-ranging thing, but Service Contract Act, Davis-Bacon Act, wage terminations, all of those contracts were a big contributor to that $2.8 billion. And those all have contributed to employers now trying to not only bid in line with the financial requirements of the contract, offer the best benefits for recruitment and retention to your employees, but also have this looming specter over your head that the DOL could be watching and making sure that you're doing the right thing, and they can come knock on your door at any time. And they have $2.8 billion of reasons of why they want to continue to do that. Next slide. So, quick background on the SCA. As you know, there is a wage that you have to pay your employees per hour. That is under the wage termination. And then there is a bona fide fringe benefit amount, or a health and welfare amount, that needs to be paid to every employee for every hour worked. It cannot be subjected to only full-time employees. This also pertains to part-time employees, and you can't choose to not pay it or provide it. Now, you can provide that in a number of different ways. The preferred method is to provide it to a bona fide fringe benefit, and that is any benefit that constitutes a value to an employee, including cash in lieu of benefits. The waiver there is if you provide cash in lieu, you also have to pay the taxes on that money because now it's received as compensation by the employee, and that amount of taxes and the increase to your workers' compensation calculations are not reimbursable by the health and welfare. So if you choose to pay cash in lieu, just understand you will be paying more than you're receiving in reimbursement, and that will eat into your contract profitability. We'll talk more about that soon. Compliance reporting. Oh, if you can go back real quick. Compliance reporting is required by the Department of Labor. They can ask at any single time for you to prove that you've broken down the compensation earned by your employees by the benefits they elected for every hour worked. That knock on the door is now a mandate. You have a certain amount of time to return that reporting around. And if you cannot, it can lead to fines, penalties, all the way up to debarment from government contracting if you're grossly negligent. So please keep in mind, The number one cause of DOL audits is an employee notifying DOL that they feel that they're not receiving the proper compensation or benefits. They don't have to be proven right. All they have to do is feel that they're not receiving the right thing, and they can call that 800 number and have the DOL sicked on you. Next. So we talk a little bit about here at Axim to be more than just a benefits consultant or a provider. How do we help the employer offer the best value for the best prices and the best benefits? That comes down to your build or your wrap rate, right? How you're building your fringe allotment. If you're an SCA contractor, you're bound by this amount of money that you have to pay each hour, whether it's the high or low fringe. Well, that's your fringe buildup, along with some taxes and other things. But how you manage your fixed cost, your G&A and your overhead, that's where we can help. Those variable parts of your buildup is where you will make money or lose money. As previously indicated, things like cash in lieu, taxes, the increase to your workers' comp. If you don't properly allocate for those things as you go through your contract, you will lose money. It will become unprofitable, and it will hurt your competitive rate structure as you try to grow your firm. So as you're in the structure of wanting to win contracts, constantly bid, these are the thresholds that we help you monitor and make sure that you're keeping an eye on so you don't get too far askew and run yourself out of contracting or the potential of winning new contracts. But it should all wash out to transparent compliance reporting, clear and positive benefits administration, so you have it integrated, and better benefits for your employees. So managing DOL compliance. People always ask, what are the most common mistakes? From the last 13 years of doing this in the Metro DC area and across the country, we found that predominantly with the law changing, these three markers are constantly being updated. I'm going to start at the longest term issue that's actually been coming up year over year, and it's not number one. It's actually number two, properly classifying SCA and non-SCA employees. That is the longest issue that we've dealt with year over year for the past 13 years. Do you know if your employees are exempt or non-exempt? Exempt means no SCA and they're not receiving the health and welfare dollars. Non-exempt means they're an SCA employee. If you don't understand the wage termination in an RFP, you need to ask someone. So I'm sure Ameka and her team would be more than happy to answer those questions so you can properly identify the proper wage determinations. But if you miss and you misclassify someone and they're actually owed that SCA amount and you get audited, that is an immediate failure. You have to go back and true that person up immediately. And if you haven't properly allocated for that, you might not have the money. Now, if you win a contract or you're a subcontractor that has a demand for rapid growth, that can impede your growth, it can impede your corporate strategy, and it can actually cripple your company. So that is the longest standing issue when it comes to DOL compliance. And that is definitely not understanding the proper wage terminations and classifications for your employees. The next thing that's been coming up consistently over the last couple of years is not understanding Executive Order 13706, which we have number one here. This was put into place to mandate that employees receive up to 56 hours, no less, of sick leave on an SCA contract. This is not state by state, this is federal. This supersedes any state requirement. If your contract is on the high fringe, which right now is set at $4.60 per hour, meaning you have to pay that to employees for bona fide benefits every hour they work. The high fringe, I'm sorry, is 460. The low fringe is set at 423. That's where 13706 comes into play. Meaning you have $4.23 per hour to pay for the benefits, but you also have to provide that 56 hours of sick leave. That's unquestioned, and it is on top of holiday pay or holidays. And moreover, you need to track that. So if you do not have systems in place to track that, you can run into regulatory issues, you can run into contract issues, and you will definitely be fined. So this is something to be aware of while you have your wage terminations and your valuation. Where do your contracts sit? And do you have different types of contracts? One could be the high fringe, one could be the low fringe, and are you properly tracking both? The third most common mistake that we see when it comes to SCA and DOL compliance is the job classification and hourly wage. On top of the wage termination and classifying whether they're SCA and non-SCA, have you put them in the correct job classification, and are you paying them correctly? All across the country, companies big and small make these mistakes. They don't see the proper wage termination in the RFP. They don't make the proper decision whether it's SCA or non-SCA. They might list somebody to get a higher amount per hour on the wage termination, but they're actually doing SCA work. These are all things that can and will come back to hurt you. So when they do an audit, or a prime needs an internal audit done because they have been audited, you have to submit all this in your build up or your roll up to the prime and or the Department of Labor. And if you're missing in these classifications, there are extreme fines and penalties that they will impose on you. There's no questions asked about this. It does not take a rocket scientist to ask a question. Ameka, being a former contracting officer, they welcome the questions because they want you to get it right. They don't want you to be wrong, because then that reflects on them that they might have to make some contract mods or adjustments. And that's a lot of work when a contracting officer has multiple contracts across an agency that they're managing, and hundreds or tens of contractors asking the same questions. This is a lot of work. So it always behooves you to stay out in front of it and not wait for it retroactively, because that will absolutely hurt your company. Next slide. We talked briefly earlier about paying cash in lieu and maintaining contract profitability. Cash in lieu is, and absolutely always will be, the path of least resistance. Your employees on the SCA side will always demand cash in lieu of benefits. The issue is, for you as an employer, can your rate structure sustain cash in lieu of benefits? We've seen time and time again that they cannot. If your intent is to grow, or you're with a prime that needs you to grow with them on a large contract, they probably won't let you offer cash in lieu for the simple fact of continuity of contract. Benefits being offered will always be in line and the most cost-effective way to manage your SCA health and welfare. Again, cash in lieu will cause a taxable event, which will increase your rates, and it will increase your workers' comp benefit structure. So those rates will also be impacted to your overhead. These are all ways to slow down the growth of your company, or possibly derail you from being a preferred subcontractor to a contractor, to a prime, and you want to do and can do the work. Next slide. We've put together a quick case study of an actual client whereby they have been in the SCA space for quite some time. They have a great business. They've known about outsourced administration and benefits administration for a long time. But what they were lacking in clarity is where we stepped in to try to help them best understand benefits allotment, recuperation of some hard costs, and how to then get them sped back up as they left the 8A program and now have to go out and bid direct contracting. And this is a big decision for a lot of companies if you are in the 8A program. So you can see that they have 69 SCA employees, and their fringe rate on this contract was $441. After we were able to help them best diagnose their plans and their cost structure, we were able to reduce their overhead significantly, as you can see by those numbers, and their G&A moderately, but we were able to adjust those cost factors, again, the variable part of their rate structure. And if you go down into the admin fee, what they were previously being charged versus Axim, we were able to save $42,831 back to the contract employees. That's more benefits. So their benefit dollars were able to go up. Their overhead and G&A structure was able to go down. And now the company sits on a much better solution as they try to grow and gain new contracts outside of the 8A program. And it was a total win for that employer and their employees. But if you look also at replacing benefits, which they had thought about, just giving cash in lieu, you can see the $94,938 hit that they would have had to add back to their overhead structure. So that would have kept them away from doing what they want to do as they try to grow their company. Next slide. So building proper benefits for SCA contracts. Very common questions. Everybody has their own corporate culture. Everybody has their own design model, things they want to offer their employees. And that's the way it should be. When I started in this business, it was buy benefits from us. We'll tell you that we're doing the contracting compliance for you. And that's all you need to know. There was very little transparency in the industry. A lot of companies were making a lot of money. Well, I set out to change that. Our focus was, how can you take that dollar amount and build what's right in your corporate culture and the best for the risk that you have, AKA your employees, and the risk they have for their families? How do you protect them the absolute best way that you can? So whether that's health insurance and dental, providing a retirement plan for the excess health and welfare, bringing in alternative benefits with the health and welfare dollars for maybe a retiree or a veteran so they can still protect their families. It's being creative across what you want to provide within your corporate culture. And then you want to look at things like your contract duration. You want to look at the funding types of contract. Is it firm fixed price? Is it cost plus? You want to take in those factors, understand the duration of the contract and the funding method, then with the fringe dollars applied to it, and build the best benefits that you can, as well as duration of those benefits. So you want to start looking at how your plans will be protected from large increases year over year, and making sure that you're not getting a 10, 15, 20, 30% increase on your healthcare plans because you can't change your rate structure by that much. So you want to make sure that you have somebody that understands this, understands government contracting, and how to best apply those dollars and that contract knowledge for your gain and your employees' gain year over year. And then finally, what happens when you start to grow, right? Everybody in this country will say, that's excellent, it's outstanding. If you're a government contractor, it's not that easy, because your partners, your chosen partners, maybe payroll and or an HR partner or a benefits broker, they don't understand your business. And they don't understand the requirements that come along with being a government contractor, or the possible pitfalls and the money attached to that. And that's why they call us, because they don't, if they're competent, they call us. The issues around your growth, while they look great on a spreadsheet, they could be detrimental on the back end, because your costs could start to ramp up on the benefit side, depending on how you fund your benefit plans, the type of plans you have in place. Maybe you take on too much risk. Maybe you don't grow as expected. And then all of a sudden you are looking at out-of-pocket costs for the company, or maybe big increases year over year. That only hurts your ability to provide, again, consistent, great benefits year over year for your employees, as well as a competitive rate structure to win more business and continue to grow. Next slide. So we always like to tell our clients, winning is only half the battle. Because once you win, everybody's excited, and then you have to go to work. And on the back end, the work in the administration in the SCA is a lot, right? This is where you can start to add staff, because you say, we're going to do everything in-house. We're going to manage payroll. We're going to manage our compliance. We're going to manage our benefits through our broker, which is all great. But the more staff you add, the more overhead you add. The more you grow overhead, the less your profitability. And unless you're rapidly growing consistently, contract after contractor, headcount after headcount, you have to realize the SCA is a body shop. And unless you're growing in that body shop, you're not going to make money. You have to continually look at your strategy around go, no go. Do we even bid this? And if we bid it, what's our likelihood of win? And if we're going to win, how competitive are we going to go to win? And does that mean we're going to take a hit to profitability? These are the questions that you want to ask first. And then once you win it, now you start to pull apart. Okay, do we know the DOL rules for this contract? Job classifications, 13706. What's the SCA rate? That's the first question. Then you want to look at, did we win and now a CBA is involved or a union shop, right? Are we doing work and now the union rules override what we want to offer in benefits, right? So you have to understand that language because the CBA will override the SCA requirements. Do you understand your PTO requirements for the contract if you're doing a takeover or if it's a new contract? And then you want to keep up on all the modifications. What happens if the fringe rate updates middle of the year, typically late June or July? Have you contacted your contracting officer? If you have unexpected changes to workforce or duties, as we just had seen from the last 2 years, right? Contracts that were supposed to work straight Monday through Friday then became 7-day, 3-shift work. And are you prepared to handle that type of fluctuation internally? Do you have the right partners for payroll if you outsource or HR? Do they understand these things? And then maximizing your fringe spend, like we had talked about with the optimal plan designs and build for your corporate culture, and not 1 penny less or 1 penny more than your fringe allotment, which is the health and welfare amount. You also have to take in consideration the back office folks and the executives. How are you paying for their benefits? Because that's all overhead, right? And you're managing your hard costs there, so you're not spiraling out of control on the back end. I think a thing that goes way overlooked is the accurate compliance reporting, because a lot of folks say we do this in a spreadsheet and we've got it. That's great. But as time goes on and people are more burdened with more work, let's say you leave it to HR or CPA or someone, things get missed. The DOL is counting on you to miss those things. That's how they recuperated over $2.8 billion. So when you outsource or you look to a partner, make sure that they can guarantee their work. For example, and this is no sales job, but I believe, and it's always been, that Axim is the only company in this industry that will guarantee our work. That if we miss and the DOL finds a mistake after the work that we've done, we pay the fine. We hold our clients harmless. We honestly believe, and I've always made it a firm philosophy, people pay us to do a job. If we don't do our job, why should they have to pay again? So find a partner that has that ethos and will protect you and protect the work that they are representing. And then finally, turnover. Turnover is brutal on an SCA contract because A, it's hard to find people in the first place. B, it's really hard these days to keep people in place. And it's been proven that solid benefits and communication are keeping people to work. And there's a statistic that McKinsey put out a year ago almost, where they had stated that the turnover ratio in this type of work, the applicable NAICS codes, was 69%. Axim then did a deep dive into our client and partner database. We found that our turnover ratio is 39%. That is a massive swing. And if you can keep employees in working for you just a couple months longer, it will be the difference between make or break in your profitability in your contract, because turnover is expensive for everybody. But that turnover also applies to if they're in your benefits structure, they bring risk. They bring a spend. If that person spends a lot in your medical plan and then doesn't work the commensurate amount of hours to make up or pay for those premiums or that risk, you could have an upside down health plan. And that could then pretend to large increases year over year. And you should have a partner that's very cognizant of that and knows how to best manage it. And that does it for my end of it. And we're open for questions.
Yes, if anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself.
No questions. This is a first.
Right. No questions?
Ameka, did you have any questions? Anything coming from a previous contracting officer? And I mean, you see it through your corporation all the time now. Are there questions that you had, or maybe something that stood out to you?
Yeah, what stood out to me, you made a good point about when a solicitation is posted and the contracting officer says attaches that wage determination, and they're saying that it's going to be an award under the Service Contract Act. And you mentioned that a lot of contractors, they're looking at that wage determination, and there's all of those labor lines and dollars associated with them, and sometimes having difficulty making that selection. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Absolutely. So as somebody's looking down the line in their award or their potential award, they want to make sure that they have looked at the work that they offer, that they provide, and they've aligned it to what the contracting officer says the job needs. For example, we often find a lot of times where somebody will say, we do that work, but what they're putting in as the wage determination is pays too low. We can't keep our employee to do that job on the government contract. So they'll change the wage determination to fit the pay scale for that current employee. And that's not appropriate. That is literally changing the job function for that employee from the original intent of the RFP. Maybe the employee that you have allotted for that contract isn't right for that contract. And you need to either hire and or interview for a new person to fill what was put in the requirement by the government. You don't get the opportunity to arbitrarily change the wage determination that was set. You can ask questions and ask if it was appropriate, but again, from your experience, contracting officers see so many opportunities. People can make mistakes, and it doesn't hurt to ask the question, do you really mean this level of person for that rate? Because we can't find anybody to do that. Then that's when the contracting officers say, oh, you know what? I'm a letter off, or I'm a couple digits off, and we need to relook at this. And they can modify the RFP.
Exactly. Modify it, extend it a few more days. Exactly, to give everyone a chance to kind of regroup. You're absolutely right. So, my next question would be, for government contractors, new government contractors coming into this space. So this will be all brand new for them. They're probably not even thinking about the things, like you said, the fringe, what they have to actually account for. And I've met contractors who've actually taken losses because they didn't want to be debarred or get terminated for default, and they didn't know any of this stuff, so they worked on the contract, lost money. So what would be your recommendations for a government contractor that's brand new into the space? They've just won their first large contract, and they really need to be mindful of these rates.
First and foremost, join our LinkedIn page. It's Axim Fringe Solutions Group. We give away a ton of free information all the time. And it doesn't hurt to ask questions, right? So there's so many resources right now on the various LinkedIn company pages for SCA, DBA, Government Contracting Network. There's just a ton of groups out there, and everybody that I found in these environments and these groups are always willing to help. The second thing is your local PTAC, as you know, they have a ton of free resources. So they can send information to you. They can direct you to where in the FAR that you need to look up, or maybe some internet resources that they have and they've had stored away. It's free. And I think that that's always a great place to start, because if you win your first contract and you don't know what you're getting into, it's going to hurt you, period. And there's so many people out there that have walked that minefield before. We're perfect living, breathing examples of it. I can keep you away from a lot of things. You don't have to sign as a client with us. Asking a question doesn't cost you anything. giving you an answer that's going to keep you out of harm's way doesn't cost us anything. If we can help and we can truly turn around that resource, we'll do that. And we're not the only group out there. There are tons of groups out there that will answer those questions at a bunch of keystrokes, essentially. So I would highly encourage groups or folks to learn what's out there just from the LinkedIn groups to start.
Nice. Perfect. Perfect. And I believe that's all of my questions. Yes.
Well,
Well,
I
I want
really
to,
appreciate the time and thank you.
yes, thank you for coming on, for sharing your knowledge. And I'm sure our guests appreciate your information as well. And I'm just going to share your contact information again. So you can reach out to Mr. Jim Campbell with Axim Management Retirement. His point of contact is Paul Verdale, and his number
Dial.
is
Yep.
Verdile, excuse me, 240-720-0318, or you can email him. And also you can reach out to us at BidExecs as well. My email is ameka@bidexecs.com. So I want to thank you all for your time today, and you have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Ameka. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you all so much if you're listening.